Good evening and welcome to tonight's informational work session number 2 regarding the project associated with the New York State Office of Court Administration and Lackawanna City Court. My name is Chuck Clark and I'm the Director of Development, Marketing, and Public Information. Tonight's presentation is going to cover a series of information. Gene, if you want to move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we got a series of information. We're going to start with a quick overview of how this project began with the New York State Courts. Then Ari Kwiatkowski from the City Attorney's Office is going to go through a series of information that was already presented in different formats back in March, culminating in a solutions under consideration and a recommendation. Our partners from CPL Engineering Firm are going to be going through the recommended solution from a design, functionality, and layout perspective. Jackie Dole, our controller, is going to talk about that same recommended solution from a financial impact and tax implication perspective, and Mayor Iafallo is going to close it out. So, Gene, with the next slide. So, real quickly, before I turn it over to Ari, this slide is designed to allow some retrospective, if you will, on how this project came about and how it incorporates into the new City Hall project. There is commentary out on social media and in the community that we somehow did not account for the courts project in the new City Hall project or at all, and that's incorrect. And if you see from these slides, there's always been 3 phases of the new City Hall project. The first phase is obviously the construction of the building on South Park Avenue. Okay, that had to happen first. That actually started in the prior mayor administration in terms of asbestos removal and some other roofing and solidification efforts. But the bulk of the construction and all of that has happened under Mayor Iafallo, absent the COVID delays that we've experienced. So we seem to be at the culmination of that really soon. We hope to be in that building before long. But once that building is down, the next phase will involve demolition of the Orange Extension building. And that probably will take a year or so to do, and the intent of demolishing the Orange Extension building was to return the front part of the original City Hall building, which today is used for police and courts, back to its original open layout landscape design. And the last picture that you see here is obviously a picture from probably like the 1940s, maybe early 1950s, but it's the best one I could find to give a visual layout of what the front of the original City Hall building looked like. That is where the police and court project really emanated from, because the third phase was always involving a couple of features. One, and I don't know how many people know this, but the elevator and the ADA access to get into the police and court building is actually in the Orange Extension. So once the Orange Extension came down, we were going to need to, at a minimum, create a new entryway that was ADA compliant and so on. There were also other elements to it: roofing, HVAC, windows, things of that nature. But the scope of that was always intended to be a reasonable renovation to get us into the next chapter of this site, if you will, with the intent of, as future administrations come in, to do a detailed site plan and analysis of what the courts may need. That all changed in 2025. The courts, starting early in 2025, reached out with some communication, asking about site plan, and they really accelerated their conversation in late 25. And this is where I'll turn it over to Ari, but the summary of it is that their space demands are anywhere from 50% to 159% of what their current capacity is in this building. So that triggered, a number of conversations led by the prior to Ari, John Gahn, and then Ari took them over. So I'm going to transition over to Ari at this point. She'll take you through the conversations, where we were, and some of this, a lot of this hopefully will be familiar to you from the March public information session on this same topic.
Thank you, Chuck. Good evening, City Council members. I just want to say, as I'm speaking this evening, if you have any questions, just feel free to kind of wave a hand or interrupt me. Happy to answer questions as we go along. This is our second public information session, so I don't want to rehash, everything that was reviewed in the first one, but I do want to provide a little bit more context just for the council and for members of the public who may be listening at home and who may be new to the situation or learning about it for the first time. So, Office of Court Administration is a statewide agency. It is an agency responsible for the administration of all the courts statewide. So as the council knows and the public knows, we have City Court here. Lackawanna City Court is on the 2nd floor. Basically the rest of this space on this wing of the building. The employees of Lackawanna City Court are not city employees. They're employees of the New York State court system. The city, under the judiciary law, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, is required to provide the court with a space for Lackawanna City Court to function. The city's been doing that for decades. The current space is about approximately 8,100 square feet, and that relationship is really born out of a lease agreement, which is also contemplated by the judiciary law. But right now, the city has a lease with the Office of Court Administration, or one of its divisions, and that is how we provide the space for the court to function here. And that's how it's been functioning for decades, essentially without large issue. As Chuck mentioned, the first time that Mayor Iafallo, this administration, in either term, heard from the Office of Court Administration about potentially making renovations or expanding the court space provided was in January 2025. About a month or so later, the then city attorney at the time, John Gahn, responded and said, we received your email. Our first priority is to finish our new Lackawanna City Hall, but we will reevaluate once our project is complete and get back to the court. The law department heard nothing, Mayor Iafallo heard nothing until late August. So basically for all of 2025, we heard nothing from the court. In August, the OCA kind of reiterated their request and asked for a meeting with the administration, which we did have in September. It was at that point that OCA had made it known to the administration that they were looking to really do some substantial repairs in the Lackawanna City Court space. And they requested at that time that the city coordinate, facilitate, participate in a walkthrough of the court space. And at that time, the court made it known that they wanted to include not only local representatives, but also representatives at the state level, such as their director of finance and also the court's architect. So that walkthrough occurred at the end of October. I believe it was on Halloween, if my memory serves me correctly. And essentially did an evaluation of the space, walked through, took a look at the conditions, etc. As a result of that walkthrough, in November 2025, we received communication from OCA, specifically from their architect, with proposed plans or plans that the court wanted to see effectuated for the space. Can you go to the next slide, Jeannie? And as I explained back in March, those contemplated plans were significantly more expansive and larger than the court's current operational space. So as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, in this building, the court leases about 8,100 square foot from the city. I should mention that under the lease agreement, we do get an annual payment that's based on square footage. It's a set dollar amount per square footage. With this new request from the court, came a space of 21,000 square feet initially. That included a complete additional courtroom. Right now, as everyone is aware, we have one courtroom in the space. Those plans contemplated judicial robing rooms, additional staff offices, elevators, restrooms. The court was really looking for separate entrances for the judges. They were looking for more accommodations and more spaces for the court security, which is also, they are also court employees. So the court officers that you see here, when on court days, they are employees of the state. So obviously, that was an extremely significant and expansive request compared to what's currently functioning here in Lackawanna. In December, the city wrote to the court and essentially said, we recognize under the judiciary law, which we'll talk about in a moment, we have an obligation to provide the court with a functional space, but these asks are just well above and beyond what is contemplated under the law, what is necessary here, and really what the city can afford financially. And as we just kind of pointed out in this slide, we took a look at the population growth because we were really looking to see if there was any data that would justify such a significant ask on behalf of a court. I mean, we're talking about 2.5, 2.75 times the space. So looked at our population growth. We did a look back period of about 10 years, so 2014 to 2024. Our population in Lackawanna has remained fairly constant. There hasn't been a significant or substantial increase in the court's caseload. OCA, they do publish annual reports every year, which kind of go through each municipality, city court, what have you, and give you the total caseload. They break it down by type of case, etc. And in fact, we pointed out to the court that the caseload, was actually 30% lower in 2024 total from 2010. So we really tried to do our due diligence and point out to the court that we were not appreciating or understanding why such a significant expansion was requested. Since December, we've had several conversations. We updated the council and the public back in March on some of those conversations. And we're at a point where we have gone back and forth with the court on what is reasonable for Lackawanna. I think one of the asks initially was a law library, like I said, a full other courtroom. We've gone back and forth. We've had a number of meetings where we've had productive discussions with OCA, and we think we're at a spot where the parties could potentially agree eventually down the road to a space that's about 12,500 square feet. So it is more than what they have now, but it's certainly not as significant as that 21,000 square foot total. So if you're listening at home or even for the council, you're probably wondering, well, why do we have to consider this project? Because it is a substantial project, no matter which way you slice it. And the answer is that it is the requirement to provide the court with suitable and sufficient space is outlined in the New York State Judiciary Law. We put in here, it's specifically Section 39. Under that section of the Judiciary Law, the local municipalities are required to maintain the local court facilities. So we do have the lease agreement in place. We maintain the building. The court is responsible, I should say, for tenant work under the lease, which are minor repairs, painting, things like that. But by and large part, under the Judiciary Law and the legislative scheme, we are required to maintain the facilities and provide space that is suitable and sufficient. There are regulations to this law which kind of outline recommendations for courtrooms in terms of square footage, how many bathrooms, restrooms, etc. But under the Judiciary Law, we are required, the municipality is required to fund the cost of capital improvements. Now there is a provision of the law where the state will kick in some money. If we bonded a project for capital improvements, they would pay 33% of the interest on any bond, but I'll let the comptroller Jackie talk more specifically about that. But what's significant about the Judiciary Law, and I know we talked about this back in March, is that under this provision of the law, the court can request capital improvements, with the input of the municipality. If the municipality and the court cannot agree to the scope or what those capital improvements should entail, there's a mediation process that the municipality could go through. The municipality can request mediation. If that mediation doesn't work, the Office of Court Administration under the Judiciary Law has the ability to direct the the Office of the State Comptroller to withhold our state aid until those demands are satisfied. And that amount can be within, the amount withheld can be the amount of the cost, the cost of the improvements or repairs, whatever the court may be requesting in that municipality. So obviously that's very significant. This is why Mayor Iafallo, the administration have taken this so seriously. It's not something that the city has kind of come up with as its own initiative. It's really something that right now we are legally required to comply with and provide. And we're in the process of trying to work something out that is, amenable for both sides. So as we put in here, right now we get $6.31 million in annual state aid. That's what will be at risk. I'll let Jackie talk about the financial implications of this. But we do know, and I think we pointed this out in March, that the Office of Court Administration takes this very seriously, and if they believe that a municipality is non-compliant, they will and they have exercised their right to direct the Office of the State Comptroller to withhold aid, and they did it in the fall to Schenectady. And we know that Schenectady did not receive at least a $10 million payment with respect to their state aid. Now, the administration has been in touch with Mayor McCarthy, has talked several times with Mayor McCarthy. We keep in touch, and I think we're monitoring that situation because that's really our most recent precedent that we have to go off of. We're grateful, I mentioned this in March, we're grateful to Senator April Baskin and her colleagues in the Senate, Senator Fahey, who's the senator out in Albany, and in the Assembly for sponsoring legislation in January of this year. So there was a bill introduced that was co-sponsored by Senator Baskin and a counterpart in the Assembly, which basically aims to curtail the ability of OCA to direct the Office of the State Comptroller to withhold municipalities' aid under the circumstances. And to do that, the legislation proposes that there is a court facilities review panel, which isn't just made up of representatives from OCA, because right now OCA basically is the kind of judge, jury, and executioner in terms of directing the Office of the State Comptroller to withhold the aid. But it basically proposes that there's a review panel, there's representatives from the Office of the State Comptroller, Chief Administrator of the Courts, or OCA, and one member each from the Senate and Assembly with municipal finance experience, just so that committee could review whether the request from the court is reasonable. We were in touch with Senator Basket on this as recently as last week. The bill is in the Judiciary Committee in the Senate and Assembly, or it's currently pending. So as soon as we have any updates on that, we will certainly provide them. But in considering everything before the administration, the current facilities that we are providing to the court, our current, our new City Hall project, the court's asks, the financial implications, the administration has really gone through three options, which are laid out in this slide. Option one was the original approach that the court was requesting, which was to renovate or expand 714 Ridge Road. We laid out the cost here. To be clear, these costs contemplate the demolition of what we call the orange extension building, or the orange part of the building that's on that faces Ridge Road. 15 to 17 million just for the court. So for the court and the roof and the HVAC, that contemplates no changes, modifications, or updates to our police department. Obviously, the space and design options were somewhat limited due to the age of the building. It would require, a pretty significant add-on to effectuate an extension here that would accommodate the court's ask. And in addition to that, when we were considering whether we could renovate the existing court space, the court brought up the notion of, well, where will the court function while you're working on the existing space? And so we had to consider a temporary court swing space, which would accommodate the court. I know some of us are familiar with the credit union that has a modular space. We were looking at options like that that would accommodate for a swing space, but that swing space would have to be paid for exclusively by the city, and the court would not contribute any monetary contribution to that. So, and of course that's a multi-year delay in kind of tying up what the original plan was for this site once the new city hall was open. We looked also at purchasing or adaptively redeveloping a commercial building in the city. We would have to pay, the purchase cost, of course, and then it's a similar estimated cost to kind of build a space that would be for the court and also our police, because if we were going to purchase a new space, we wouldn't leave our police here. We would, the courts and the police would move. As we've outlined here, that would require major reconfiguration. We have limited inventory as it relates to that in terms of lots that actually are available. I don't think there are any city-owned buildings that would accommodate the court's purposes. Limited city-owned lots, limited lots that are non-city owned as well that could accommodate the space, and then of course we'd be taking a property off the tax roll if we bought a private property to effectuate the court's request. So that leaves us with option three, which is essentially looking at building a new police and court facility in the range of 22 to 25 million. This would be a complete new build. Our Paul from CPL, our partner, will go through this option. This is contemplated at the new City Hall site. So we would have a municipal campus there, fully built to modern standards. So I think it's important to point out that with respect to this building, obviously if we start to make substantial changes or repairs to the courts, the police, everything will need to be brought up to code because we've been grandfathered in for so long, because this is an older building. This will not affect the courts operationally. They would continue more than likely, if we pursue this option, to remain in this building and function pretty much as normal. And then this allows for the potential redevelopment of this building once the courts and police are out of the building. So we've spoken a lot, Chuck has spoken a lot, our Director of Development, about the DRI grant that we're hoping to apply for. We could incorporate the space into that grant application. So we are recommending option three. I will turn it over to Paul Dukowski, who is from CPL, to go through what we are thinking preliminarily. Please note that you won't see, specific rooms or high-level detail, as this is preliminary and we're educating the council and the public, but Paul will take you through what the recommended option entails.
Evening, everybody. Don't mind, I'll stand over here. Is that okay with the speaker? All right, thank you. So first I'd like to start looking at the site plan, so we can orient ourselves with your new City Hall site. So this is South Park running up and down on the sheet. At the north end of the page would be Ridge Road, and then the Basilica kind of at the north there. The area in white and gray is your existing site now, existing to be once they move into the new city hall. So this area here, then the gray building here is the new city hall. This is the entrance route here that comes into the parking lot, comes up here and exits out this area back on the South Park Ave. The area in green here and here is where we're kind of showing revisions to the site. This would be the building down here that we're proposing for the new city court and police building. It's about 22,000 gross square feet. As I already mentioned, courts would be roughly somewhere between like 10, 12,000 square feet. Police would be something similar. There's also some shared spaces where we can kind of overlap, such as vestibules, corridors, mechanical rooms, and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of overlap. So there's about 2,000 square feet of that. So in total, it's 22,000 square feet. We're a little bit limited on the site space here with while trying to put in some additional parking. So we're looking to do a 3-story building, or 3 levels. That could be a basement, and maybe we grow up 2 stories, or maybe it's 3 stories. It is currently a 40-foot building height maximum in this area, which we could go for a variance to go a little higher if need be. But for now, what we're showing there on the render is a 40-foot tall building, 3 stories above grade. So what you see here in green is there's a couple extras, a bunch of parking at here, also here. In total, we have approximately 117 parking spots here. What you currently have at this building is a little under 100. So it's a little bit more than what you currently have. And switching over to the site map, you see this is the city hall building here, or we're calling the municipal campus now, with the addition of police and courts. 5-minute walk down to your stadium down here provides another 100 approximately spots. So you have about 217 parking spots, which we understand that is a little bit of an issue currently, so this should help out with that hopefully. Any questions on this? Thank you. Moving on. As I already mentioned, these are very preliminary concepts. We're just starting to get the ideas. We do have ideas of where specifics might be, but just in the simplest form, kind of putting the public entrance across from the existing one at the city hall up here. So looking back at the site, this is that entrance in City Hall. Back down here would be across from it, kind of having the crosswalk there. Would be the entrance into this new building. Having a vertical circulation core that would have the 3 elevators, likely one for the prisoners, one for the judge, one and staff, and then one for the public. Having an entrance screening lobby here so employees could come in. It might be separated here from the public, and then you'd have some sort of screening area for a magnetometer X-ray machine to get to before you get into the vertical circulation. This floor we're really saying, looking at having the police there, also putting in the court security, so holding cells and stuff like that could be kind of next to each other to bring down costs, because they have similar needs. Mechanical, electrical room down there. Another vertical circulation over here just to make sure there's no dead-end corridors and to allow for to meet code. At the second, oops, second floor. This would really just be police space. It's really their offices, their storage, their gun lockers, stuff like that, their lockers and everything like that would be at this floor. And at the third level, this is where we're looking at the courts. So the public would come up through the vertical circulation. They could kind of access this yellow area, which would be more the toilet rooms, the waiting functions like that. We have the court and hearing, so we do need a 1,600 square foot court as well as a hearing space. So that's included in this 2,200 square feet. And then around this bend where we have windows and whatnot and exterior exposure, we kind of have the offices of the judge chambers, their storage. They have extensive file storage and toilets and whatnot would be in this area. Moving on to the render. So yeah, as you see here, we're really trying to create a look of a campus. So there are materials over here, and we do apologize, they're not perfect right now. We're trying to, ideally be using a lot of the same materials. This is a photo, this is a render kind of meshed together, but kind of this stone over here would kind of mimic this. So we can kind of create a campus look and start using some of the same curtain wall and storefront use over here, we could use over here to kind of suggest the language of a campus. Any questions? Anything I missed? Okay, thank you.
Evening, council members. I want to talk about the financial impact of this project. The recommended solution would be the new construction, and $24.2 million financed over a 20-year period with a 33% interest subsidy from the UCA. The average annual payment would be $1,585,909 annually. The recommended solution, again, the new financing, the new construction of $24.2 million over a 30-year period with a 33% interest subsidy from the UCA. Would average annual payment would be $1,282,809. And if we were to renovate and expand this existing location on Ridge Road, we could only finance that over a 20-year period, but we would also get the 33% interest subsidy, and the average annual payment would be $1,077,114. And I do want to note that comparing this renovated, expanding of 714 Ridge Road, again, would not include any sort of renovation to the police department. This option, if we were to do the new build, where our police department would be taken care of, the difference would be $205,695 more to do so.
And Jackie, that wouldn't include a swing space either, which is an additional $several million.
Correct. Yes. So, put a chart together for the police court facility, if we make that decision, the options, the potential tax implications. So, based on the 26-27 property tax rate of 18.98 and per 1,000 of assessed value, using that framework to determine the taxpayer impact. That is what I used. So option number one, the first path, is to do nothing, and we don't comply with OCA's facility demands. What will happen is we could potentially lose $6.3 million in annual state aid. That would be approximately a 43.7% tax increase to close that gap if we lose that funding. The unified tax rate would rise to 27.27 or 8.29 per thousand. Path number two would be to renovate, expand the 714 Ridge Road court facility only, with no renovations at all to our police department. It does protect our state aid. It would be about a 7.5% tax increase with the 20-year financing. And it defers the revenue of the police space. And the unified tax rate would increase to 20.40 or 1.42 per thousand. Construct the new police court facility with a 30-year financing option. It protects our state aid. Would be about a 9.1% tax increase, and our unified tax rate would increase to 20.71 or 1.73 per thousand. To construct the new police court facility with a 20-year financing, it also protects our state aid. Our taxes would increase by about 10.95%, and the unified tax rate would increase to 21.06 or 2.08 per thousand. The future outlook and budget pressures, as has been noted, the city leadership is working to minimize the tax burden on residents, but these figures only represent, the court mandate when I'm taking this into consideration. So looking ahead to the 2027-2028 budget cycle, the city faces separate standard inflationary pressures, including mandatory increases for employees' contractual raises that are already in place, rising health care premiums, and state retirement contributions, just to name a few. State aid unknowns, exact state funding is unconfirmed until New York State passes its 27-28 budget. And again, the police infrastructure, addressing the police department facility needs via a 3-year bond, as I mentioned, adds $205,695. I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Jim. In conclusion, honorable council members, there is no good option that would not negatively impact Lackawanna. Each of the options presented tonight will impact us in some way. In speaking with the courts, we were told this decision to upgrade the facility was kicked down the road by prior administrations for 30 years, and it stops now. The courts are only concerned with their powers under judiciary law. They are not concerned about how the city will pay for these renovations or the impact it has to our taxpayers. Their focus is solely on getting facilities which meet their satisfaction and nothing more. And they are willing to withhold our state aid until they get what they want, which the state's judiciary law gives them the authority to do. This is unconscionable and a slap in the face to all Lackawanna taxpayers. But doing nothing is not an option, as it will trigger a loss in our state aid, as was done in Schenectady. Given the extensive space demands and the new construction option was deemed the best of worst options, so to speak, we will continue to advocate for Lackawanna. I and various department heads have lobbied multiple levels of federal, state, and county governments for assistance. While no funding was secured during the current budget cycle, we were encouraged to continue advocating in the future. We will continue to lobby for state aid, and we need your help and the taxpayers to advocate with us as well. In the morning, we will post information on our social media about how taxpayers can get involved in lobbying their federal, state, and county representatives. We will keep fighting for this city. Together, we can make our voices heard. Thank you.
Do you mind if I take the floor as on behalf of the City Council? We thank you all for your presentation tonight, City Council members, as well as department heads, Mayor, Madam Mayor, thank you, City Attorney, Comptroller, Director of Development, and CPL. As the Mayor stated, there's no good news to any of this. This all comes with a substantial price tag, which we are apparently at the mercy of OCA. I guess it's a good thing that we don't have to make a decision tonight, but this is all for us to digest and to look into possibilities through local and state and federal funding. And also on behalf of, on behalf of myself, I'll say this, we're gonna eventually have to make a decision because it's pretty clear that OCA is not giving us any room to not comply. They're willing to withhold funding, and that's still gonna have an impact on us one way or another, on the taxpayer regardless. So we're gonna have to look into not only ways of attracting funding, but we're gonna have to also really tighten our budget in other ways. And I hope that we're gonna have to make some very possibly very fiscally conservative decisions on how we spend moving forward. We may have to make drastic cuts. I can't make that decision on my sole vote or introduction to any of this, but there's gonna have to be a lot of conversation, a lot of avenues to explore, and I think we have no choice but to look into those ways on how to budget, how to save, how to attract more funding, how to grant pool for grant funding and things of that nature. So I thank you all again. I know this is not an easy decision, and it wasn't something that was easily sprung on you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate you being present tonight and presenting us and everyone else. So any council members want to say anything else?
Is there a time limit on this, or?
No time limit per se, Councilperson Henderson. I think the city, because of the consequences, has been cooperating with OCA. We do have a check-in meeting with them in August, but no, we don't have a defined time frame. There's nothing that's been articulated in terms of a deadline or anything like that.
But as far as the bond we would have to go after, could we lock it in now, just at the rate it's at now? 'Cause it's,
So I think that that's a little premature, just because what we presented to the council, tonight, and for the public's edification, we have not discussed in detail with OCA. So we're, as part of the requirements of the judiciary law, OCA would have to evaluate the option of et cetera. So I think it might be premature to go down that route. I don't know, if you have it.
I agree.
so these figures might
Change.
Yes.
There, yes.
And then ultimately, what we're gonna be doing with 714 is gonna have to come up in conversation, not just conversation, but decision-making as well. Because we're gonna have a vacant building if one route is taken versus the other. So that's another thing that we're gonna have to explore. So there's a lot of decisions that are gonna have to be made, and none of them to be taken lightly. All right, so I guess I'll close the meeting. Thank you all so much, and hopefully we keep in touch and are consistently updated. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.